Imagine you're a leader. You spent years perfecting your craft. You know how to motivate your team. You know what good leadership looks like. Now imagine you've been sent abroad to lead a team, to lead a group of people who have different expectations, different beliefs, who speak a different language. These are people who can conflict with your leadership style. This isn't just a hypothetical. This is the reality in multinational organizations. And when it goes wrong, it's not just an awkward environment. It can create losses. It can stagnate working conditions. Today, I want to talk about one of the biggest leadership failures in business history and what it teaches us about the challenges of leading across cultures. In 1998, two vehicle manufacturing giants came together for a merger, Daimler-Benz from Germany and Chrysler from the US. But within a decade, it was over. Not because the business strategy was bad, not because the products were bad, but because the leaders of the project couldn't integrate their teams properly. And that's the thing. When a company expands outwards, they aren't just facing a new market, they're facing new people, new employees, a different culture, and even what the expectation of a good leadership looks like. And if a leader doesn't understand this, it's over. So what actually happened with Daimler Chrysler? Why did these two clash so hard and eventually fail? Here's two important concepts that explain it. First, we have Bass's transformational leadership. Bass studied leaders across cultures and found that the most effective ones shared four traits. We call this the four I's: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. These traits Bass found are universal. The best leaders everywhere have these traits. But the major issue is that how you express these traits must be adapted to the culture. A leader can be inspirational in the US differently from how they can be inspirational in Germany. And this brings us to the second framework, the GLOBE Project, a study done in over 62 countries examining how culture shapes what people expect from their leaders. Two findings particularly are relevant. The first is participative leadership, the extent to which leaders involve others in decisions. The US expects people to, in the US, people expect to be consulted. They want autonomy. In Germany, people prefer a clear hierarchy. They're okay with being given decisions and given a clear target. The second is charismatic-based leadership, a universal trait. But being charismatic in the US is different from being charismatic in Germany. In US, it means being enthusiastic, bright, flexible. In Germany, however, charismatic is more about being precise, formal, and competent. So here's the thing. The universal traits exist, but how you express them must fit the local expectations. Now let's see how this big failure occurred. Let's analyze the situation with Bass's framework. With idealized influence, German leaders expected respect based on authority and skills. American leaders expected respect earned through relationships and results. Germans saw the Americans as undisciplined dummies, and Americans found the Germans as arrogant. Neither respected each other. With inspirational motivation, although the merger was announced as a merger of equals, there was no real shared vision. German leaders saw it as Daimler absorbing Chrysler, and the American leaders saw it as a true partnership. Without a common vision, there was nothing to inspire people about on either side. Looking at intellectual stimulation, German leaders wanted to impose their systems. American leaders wanted to preserve their speed and flexibility. Nobody changed their own beliefs to create something new. They just kept pushing. And with individualized consideration, German managers believed in formal structures and defined processes. American managers believed in flexibility, individual empowerment, and adaptability. Both sides saw the other as simply incompetent. Now let's layer on Globe's insights. When Americans asked for input, Germans saw indecisiveness. When Germans gave orders, Americans saw tyranny. One side wanted to be consulted, and the other expected to be directed. When we say charismatic based, An American leader rallies a team with enthusiasm and informality. A German leader shows charisma by being competent, technical, reliable. Americans saw Germans as cold. Germans saw Americans as unprofessional. The result was a leadership vacuum. Neither side could inspire the other. Neither side felt understood. And because leaders couldn't model collaboration, the entire organization fell apart. What went wrong? The leaders assumed that their style was universally appropriate. They failed to recognize the actual need for change. They failed to recognize that their behaviors, which worked with their home cultures, were actively undermining the other culture. So, what does this teach us about leading multinational organizations? First, culture is a heavy filter for major decisions. Before any expansion or merger, you really need to ask, are our leadership styles and cultures compatible enough to work? Second, you can't just put a leader from your organization in a different country and expect things to work the same. The four I's needs to be expressed in ways that fit the local culture. Third, there is a need for transnational approach. Companies need to build a global leadership culture that can adapt easily to the local culture. Finally, leaders need to learn to adapt to their environment. Knowing when your style isn't working and moving quickly to find a solution is essential. Daimler Chrysler failed, but its failure taught us something. It showed us that leadership isn't just about having the right traits, it's about understanding when those traits need to be expressed differently. For the people you lead, it needs to be expressed in a way that resonates with them. And when you step into a different culture, your leadership style doesn't come with you unchanged. It needs to it needs to match where you're going. It meets situations you didn't create. And so the question isn't whether you're a good leader. It's a question about whether you're a leader who can be good where you're at. The leaders who succeed across cultures are ones who learn to change. They keep their integrity, they keep their vision, but they express it in ways that others can follow. Thank you.